the Air Force Chief of Staff, General John P. McConnell.
What is the Air Force Village, and what is it trying to accomplish? The motion picture you're about to see will try to answer these questions by dramatizing some typical examples of the problem which the Air Force Village is intended to meet. The film explains more convincingly than any words could convey that this is a most worthwhile project deserving our support. And there is something else this picture will show you. The Air Force is not just airplanes and missiles and bombs. It is primarily people. And beyond their extraordinary skills and courage and devotion, these people are very human, with human needs and human problems. We expect our men to give us their very best, perhaps even their lives while they're on active duty. In turn, they have every right to expect that we do our very best for them and their families, so that they can look to the future without worry and concern. And, as you will see, that's what the Air Force Village is all about.
Mrs. Linda Perkins recently became a widow when her husband, retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert Perkins, died unexpectedly. Mrs. Perkins does not have any children. She is alone in the world, and she is lonely. Because her income is too small to continue house payments, Mrs. Perkins will have to sell her home. She would like to move somewhere where she could regain the happiness and friendships she knew in her Air Force life. Major Bill McNeil, U.S. Air Force retired, and his wife. Bill has a bad heart, and his doctor won't let him work. His retirement pay is used up each month by financial obligations resulting from an automobile accident some years ago. He is forced to be dependent upon his son-in-law, whose modest income is not sufficient to properly house and care for more than his own family.
If my heart were only stronger, I could take a job. Catherine and I don't want to be dependent upon the children. It's a financial burden and an imposition on them. It makes life difficult for Catherine and me also. We're used to our own ways of doing things. We need independence to be happy and to be able to live our own lives.
This is Carol Hamilton and her son Tommy. The flowers are for Captain Tom Hamilton, who was killed in Vietnam. As a recent widow, Carol faces serious, unexpected adjustment problems, and she has no close relatives to help her.
I was completely dependent on my husband. He took care of so many problems which I had never concerned myself with. Now there are so many things that confuse me, like selling the house, and taxes and insurance. You know, after 3 PCS moves, we have no real roots anywhere, and I need a place where I'll have security for a while. A place where I can work out my problems and plan for our future.
Jean Ringer is the widow of a colonel. Both of Jean's children are grown up and married now. She is left alone with her memories of 26 happy years of Air Force life. Jean's financial condition is sound, but after so many years of military life, she has no place to call home, and few new neighbors she has anything in common with. She'd like to live with other women who could share the same interests and background. She is in this office to find out about the Air Force Village Foundation. The foundation is a non-profit organization. It was primarily created to provide suitable living facilities and services for widows of Air Force officers. Those who are eligible include women like Jean, who can support themselves, but who are adrift and need the companionship of Air Force Village residents. Even more importantly, the Air Force Village will provide housing and assistance to needy individuals like Mrs. Perkins, who has insufficient income to house and support herself. A young, bewildered widow like Mrs. Hamilton, who needs assistance during the difficult adjustment period after her husband's death, will be allowed to live at the Air Force Village for 1 year. The foundation will also make its services available to retired couples who can no longer provide for their own needs. About 2/3 of the residents at the Air Force Village will pay their own way, while 1/3 of the residents will be those who are unable to pay their share of the cost of maintaining the facilities. Present plans call for a high-rise building of about 200 units. Each unit will include a kitchen, dining and living room combination, a balcony, bathroom, and 1 bedroom. The high-rise units are intended primarily for widows without their families, but some units will be occupied by couples. An enclosed corridor will connect the high-rise building with a community center. The center will contain a chapel, multi-purpose rooms for meetings and social gatherings, a library, a game room, music room, dining room and kitchen, and administrative offices. Adjacent to the high-rise and community center, but not shown on this model, will be about 30 garden apartments. These units will be similar to those in the high-rise, but will include extra bedrooms. The garden apartments will be used by widows with children and by couples. Plans include space for a second high-rise and additional garden apartments as they're needed in the future. The first proposed village site will be this 15 acres in the Valley High Division of San Antonio, Texas. Donated by the Ray Ellison Industries, this prime land, worth $250,000, is just 10 minutes from downtown San Antonio. The village will be close to 6 churches, shopping centers, banks, schools, and other convenient places. Public transportation to town is good too. The first Air Force Village will be just across the street from Lackland Air Force Base with its many fine facilities. Included among these facilities is the Air Force's finest general hospital, Wilford Hall. The Foundation's goal is to have a community comparable to the well-established and successful Army Distaff Hall in Washington, D.C. A home that is a community alive with amiable, bustling people of similar backgrounds, similar interests, and experience. Apartment kitchens will be equipped with stove and refrigerator, and carpeting is planned for all apartments. The residents' own cherished possessions and furniture will give the final touch to make each apartment a real home. Residents who like to read will find a generously stocked library of good reading material. A chapel will be provided for the use of residents of all faiths. The Air Force Village will also have a fine, reasonably priced restaurant for residents who regularly or occasionally prefer not to cook for themselves. An infirmary service will occupy the entire second floor of the high-rise to handle emergencies, minor illnesses, and convalescents. The staff will consist of graduate and practical nurses on 24-hour duty, and a doctor will be on emergency call at all times. He will also make routine calls several times a week to conduct examinations and provide consultation. Admittance into the Air Force Village will not be based on race, color, creed, national origin, or the officer's rank. However, a minimum age of 55 for women and 62 for men will be a requirement. Young widows living temporarily at the village will be an exception to the age limit. The primary purpose of the facilities will be to care for the needy, and it will be a strict policy of the foundation not to reveal the identity of those residents receiving financial aid. The Air Force Village will be known to all as a place where every new arrival is received like a welcome friend into a truly warm, comfortable, happy home. Whether its residents be advanced in years or young and in temporary distress, whether they be in need of financial assistance or only looking for an escape from continual loneliness, the Air Force Village Foundation exists to help. Through its members, the Air Force Village will help provide happiness, health, security, and a continued youthful life in a spirit of fellowship. To obtain additional information about the Air Force Village, or to obtain preliminary application forms, contact your local Air Force Officers' Wives Club, or write to the Air Force Village Foundation, Bolling Air Force Base, Washington, D.C. Speaking for the Air Force Village, wife of the Air Force Chief of Staff, Mrs. John P. McConnell.
Those of us who have the security of family and friends may forget that there are Air Force people who are lonely, widowed, and insecure. These people's problems are often magnified by poor health, lack of financial resources, no family, or perhaps an indifferent family. The Air Force Village Foundation is dedicated to assisting people like this. The film, which you have just seen, shows ladies at the Army Dispatch Home living comfortable and fulfilling lives in surroundings similar to those we hope to offer at the Air Force Village Foundation. Because of your generous support in the past, the Air Force Village Foundation is nearly a reality. Soon, we shall have nearly 300 dependents and some couples living in the first Air Force Village, and the problems of some of our people will be taken care of. As you know, 2/3 of these residents will be paying their own way, but about 1/3 will need some financial assistance. And it seems to me fitting that Air Force Officers' Wives Club arranged to include in their annual welfare budget a contribution toward the support of these less fortunate members of our Air Force community. The continued success of the Air Force Village Foundation requires money, yours and mine. So when you are asked to contribute, remember that the Air Force Village Foundation is a very special place for very special people, Air Force people.